Okay, we are live. Not going to mess around with intros today because Congressman Cohen is at an airport and ready to go. So welcome back to the Holler. Justin here, Congressman Cohen. Very nice to see you today. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to touch base with you as we sort of debrief after that circus of a speaker vote. Just real quick, what's your reaction to what we just saw happen with House Republicans?
Well, there's a group of 20, as we saw, did not want to go along with McCarthy. I can see reasons not to go along with McCarthy, but they mostly they wanted attention. They wanted to have opportunities. Excuse me for a second. Hey, thank you, Darius. No problem. You want to start over, or we just go on?
No, we're good. We're rolling.
Okay.
They wanted attention. Go from there.
They wanted attention, and they wanted to have more influence, I think. But the main thing, I think, they wanted attention, and they didn't like. Some of them just didn't like McCarthy. But what it portends is an impossibility for the Republicans to function as a group like the Democrats did, because they are dysfunctional, and they have an extreme group: the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Bo Barretts, the Gateses, the Gosars, they go on, and some new ones that are pretty crazy, that are really strange. They were, some of them were insurrectionists, some of the new ones weren't, but would have been. They're going to spread the QAnon type stuff, and it's going to be a difficult time for America, because we're going to have a problem getting the debt limit passed, and that'll affect the economy and the ability of the United States to spend money. And we'll have trouble getting budgets passed. I mean, this is going to be a serious problem for our economy.
So I guess I would ask, you say there's a group of them that are extremists, but the problem I'm sort of having is, I don't know if it's a group of them, or is this just who the Republicans are now? Like, they kept saying the Democrats should work with Republicans to install a moderate. It's like, who are the moderates? Do you see moderates still in the House Republican caucus, or is it one big extremist party?
Well, there's a few that you consider moderates, and of course, it's all relative. Most of the people that we think of as moderates either got beat in the 2022 election, or chose not to run because they voted to impeach Trump, or voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, or with people like Anthony Gonzalez and John Katko, who just got tired of getting harassing treatment for the families and themselves back home, and it wasn't worth it. So we've lost a lot of those people, Kinzingers and Liz Cheney's, et cetera. There's still some okay people, but they're keeping their heads down, and they're not standing up because they're a little afraid of Trump and that wing of the party. And that's still the dominant wing of the party, is the kind of the Freedom Caucus wing, which is kind of like the know-nothing part of the world. They control that party pretty much. There are some that are more extreme than others. There are some that play to that crowd more than others. But the crowd that mostly plays to them is a pretty good minority, but it's enough to stop them from getting a majority vote on most of what they want to do. And I can see them making motions to remove McCarthy. I don't think they'll get the votes. I don't see the Democrats joining in to remove McCarthy and cause the chaos, and I don't think they can get together every Republican to do it. So it just could be a logjam.
Well, it seemed like you were at least making light of it, trying to keep it light as it went. You posted this cartoon of Gates coming out the butt of the Republican Party. And then I got to ask you, what was your response to the fight on the House floor where Mike Rogers essentially went after and had to be restrained when he went after Matt Gaetz? We saw the next day Congressman Tim Burchett basically out him as having been drinking on the House floor during these votes. What was your response when you saw it almost devolve into fisticuffs?
Well, I wasn't surprised. I mean, it was late, and the people were at the edges and the ends of their limits of their restraint. I'm sure they were upset with one vote. Gates was certainly trying to make himself, as he did, the center of attention.
Yeah.
And it was a drama queen. It was a drama queen show, just like when he nominated Trump. Trump wasn't going to be the speaker. Trump probably asked him to nominate him, but he was given a revisionist history of Trump, and it was pretty difficult to bear to watch that. But he had the authority to do it, nominate somebody, and did it. I think they were fed up with Gates and fed up with Bo Barrett and those people, and it did. I wasn't that close to it. I didn't smell his breath. I didn't see him drinking. I don't know if he was drinking or not, but it seemed like the conduct of somebody who might have been drinking to get that. And obviously Richard Hudson thought came behind him, and he must have known that there was trouble brewing, and that's when he put his hand over his mouth.
Right.
He might have got that.
So I want to ask you a little bit about, and before I let you go, I know you got to go. These are apparently, according to the Epoch Times, which is a right-wing outlet, these are some of the concessions that were given to, get these extremists to change their vote. Although, I think you could probably make a case that they weren't really looking for anything except attention, like you already have. They talk about a single congressperson being able to vacate the speaker. They talk about a church-style committee to get the FBI to look into the quote unquote weaponization of the FBI. Some of them seem fairly reasonable, like term limits being put up for a vote, or a single subject rather than an omnibus. Then there's something about immigration, the end the COVID mandates, and then at the end, the budget bill will stop endless increases in the debt ceiling, which I think is probably the scariest and most dangerous fight that we're facing, because that could take us into a global economy. Have you had a chance to look at some of that list, and what do you think about them? Is there any merit to any of that?
Well, I like they had one portion of it was to say that they would have all the salaries of federal officials would be revealed, and I've tried to get TVA to give me the list of people that earn over $1 million at TVA, and they've refused to do it. They only release the folks that they have to by the Securities and Exchange Commission rules, and they release the salaries of those people. But there are lots of other people earning over $1 million at TVA. TVA is really a nest egg and a little honeypot for some people that I think more interested in their warmth than the people in Tennessee's warmth. And we've got an executive making over $10 million. I kind of think he seems like he's a nice enough fellow and all that stuff. But when you're making $10 million and you were making $2 million when they hired you running a Canadian energy company, had too much money, and he just got into the opportunity to take that kind of money, which Bill Johnson set up. So I like the idea of that, and I'm going to work with Burchett on that. He'll get the TVA salary, but it won't pass the Senate. Really, probably not going to make any difference. A lot of what they're going to do is not going to pass the Senate, and it'll just be something they have to claim they did something at campaign time, or claim Democrats didn't do it because they vote for it. But it's not out of most of us become law. Probably need to law like the budget and the debt limit, which are difficulty getting done. And I don't have Bar McCarthy will go to see that it's done, and how many votes he'll get on his side to get it done. And if he does, I think that's what they'll try to get rid of it. One person gets a motion, then it has power to get rid of it. I don't think the majority get rid of the Democrat position. We're not rid of McCarthy. Who's his replacement going to be? It's not like you're going to go find Sam Rayburn or John McCormick or whoever. Right. There's not going to be replaced. Even Jim Boehner.
Just as a final thing here, and then I'll let you go. And I appreciate you spending this time with us. Can you tell a little bit about that debt limit issue? That seems to be something that is their focus. And, my general understanding of it is we've passed spending. Raising the debt limit is basically just to kind of pay our credit card bill, to pay for what we've already spent. And what they're basically saying is they want to threaten to default on our spending, which would essentially maybe tank the global economy unless they get cuts in essential programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, housing, food stamps, that kind of thing. Maybe there are some that Democrats might even be with them on, like the military, but in general, it's essentially threatening to tank the global economy unless we make cuts to essential programs. Do I have that right, or is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's money we've spent with on credit and bonds, through bonds that we've sold around the world, and we'll have to default on the bonds because we won't have the money to pay for them. We've done that for forever, and we've done the debt done. I don't think they understand it. They don't care, and they do. And Medicaid and Medicare, something they can't allow. And they want to cut democratic programs that help children. There's a good article which I read. I think the guy's name is maybe Cowling. It was a professor at Vanderbilt wrote a book about George Wallace, about that. Not about George Wallace, but George Wallace is part of it. It goes pre-Civil War through Reconstruction and into the post-Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, Brown versus Board of Education, where George Wallace up, and it traces the history of what they called freedom. And when they talk about freedom, which the Freedom Party talks about, that's freedom from having the federal government come to our country, the country supposed to be the Constitution and a more perfect union, give the freedom to vote, giving people the freedom to have health care and the freedom to have public education and have help from the federal government, and like children that are born into poverty with the child tax credit. They don't want any of that stuff. That's the freedom they don't want. They want the freedom to say no to the federal government, allow people to discriminate, and not have the government help people have a chance at the American dream. And that's where we've gotten this book. It's just come out. I think it's called The Dominion or the something. And it was a Vanderbilt professor, and he wrote, and it was really good. I just read the book review in the Times, so I hadn't had a chance to read the book yet. But it does trace the history in the South, what they did to the Indians, the people that came in, migrated into Alabama and the South particularly in the middle 1800s, and how they ran the Indians off, took their land, and ran them off. Andrew Jackson felt sympathy for the Creeks in Alabama, even though he wasn't too good on the Indians either. He was not good at all. Civil War, where they left the country, Reconstruction, when the blacks got a chance, and then that deal was cooked in '76 with the Hayes-Tilden election. We went after that, we went into after Reconstruction, we went into Jim Crow, and Jim Crow was, and then they had chattel labor, where you could basically buy prisoners, and the prisoners were basically kind of slaves to the moneyed interest, and that's they bought cheap labor, and they did that for years, and then they fought all kind of civil rights. It's been something that's been in the South forever, and it's the base of the Republican Party. It goes back 170 years in America, and it hasn't changed.
Do you see any resonance between, we saw you guys have the ceremony on the steps where only one Republican joined you in commemorating the attack on the Capitol. And then we now see in Brazil, we're seeing, an insurrection down there where things are essentially echoing what we saw in Washington. I also want to point out that conspicuously, Mark Green went down to Brazil and talked to Bolsonaro's people. So I think that's worth asking Mark Green about if anybody's out there, because that's something that's sort of unavoidable now that we're seeing what's going on down there. Do you see echoes of January 6th and what's going on in Brazil, and any ties between the conservatives in Brazil and the conservatives in Washington?
Well, there certainly are parallels. Bolsonaro tried to relate Trump, and he did a lot of things anti-environmental in Brazil and the Amazon, which is important to the world's cultural climate health. And he put in a lot of restrictive policies that didn't, like Trump did, that didn't help. He's a fascist, and now hiding out in Orlando because he's afraid he'll be arrested when he comes home for corrupt deeds, which I'm sure he did corrupt deeds. But it's a situation, and when you see that, you think banana republic, and you think, oh, a republic just like Washington. I wouldn't be surprised if Roger Stone or Bannon or Flynn or some of those crazy that were around Trump, their hands in it. Now, I didn't know anything about Mark Green, but smells of what went on is parallel to what went on in Washington, D.C. Fortunate. And, when Matt Gaetz got up on the floor to nominate Trump, which he had every right to do, but that was a joke. Trump wasn't going to be speaker. He just probably did it for Trump, who asked him to get up and nominate him. And, genuflected. And I sat and listened, and I thought, this is absurd. We've got to sit here and listen to this, which is just him having the microphone and got a national audience to say how Trump was so good. He did so much good in the Middle East, and he did good here, and he did good there. And he said he's the only president he can remember who didn't get us into a war. I don't know that Jimmy Carter got us into a war either. And I'm not sure if regardless, with Obama in trying to fight the Al Qaeda, what he did was right. That wasn't getting us into a war per se, and maybe wasn't. But Trump did the same thing, and Trump was in Afghanistan. So what I don't know what it meant, but when it got that, it just irked. And I was listening at the distance, and I thought this has to be answered, responded. The Democrats didn't have a chance to respond. All use that avenue. Gates did to get the center stage and to have his vision painted at Trump, and I had to say something. Yeah, he put a war on in this and tried to overthrow our government. And he stopped and paused, and he went on and finished his speech. I think I curtailed it a bit, but it needed to be said. We needed to stand up to him. And every time Americans have an opportunity to stand up and say what happened on January 6th, 2001, that it was a insurrection and a violent attempt to overthrow our government, and Trump was at the head of it, and he's a treasonous individual, and he will be indicted, I believe. We need to say it, because we don't need to let them paint this as just another day in the park and just a protest movement and people coming up there to exercise their constitutional rights. These were the lowest of the low, who knew only power and tried to overthrow the government. And they would have killed Pence, and they would have killed Pelosi. And if they'd have got a hold of me, they'd have killed me. And I was in the gallery, and I had fear for my life and fear for the Republic. And to sit in that chamber and to hear Matt Gaetz give that revisionist talk, I just couldn't take it. So I did call out, and I'm happy I did it. I did the right thing, and it was the only opportunity he had was to go out of order, to speak to some extent, to say BS. And there was a lot of BS going on in there.
Well, I appreciate you speaking out. You're the only Democratic representative from Tennessee left. So thanks for holding down the fort up there. Feeder Monkey wants to know the name of that book one more time. What was the name of that book you mentioned? You remember it?
I've got my pack here with me, and I've got this. Let me get this. I give my Times book review to a friend, and I copied it here. Americans remarked after the Civil War. Where is this? This is here shortly after George Wallace. It's a saga of white. No, that yeah, it is. It's called Freedom's Dominion. Freedom's Dominion, a saga of white resistance to federal power by Jefferson Cowie, Cowie, and it just came out. Basic books, $35. 497 pages, and I copied it. My copy machine is not real good, because I gave my original copy to my friend, who I give one of my missions each week is to give her the New York Times book reviews. But it shows their hypocrisy and their long-standing efforts to quelch out people's opportunities and freedoms and justice, and what freedom means to them and what freedom means to most people, the Democrats. And I guess not to freedom's nothing. Freedom just the word for nothing left to lose. Me and my Bobby McGee. You know?
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, Congressman Cohen, safe travels home. Thanks for being up there. I know it's
Janis Joplin.
That's right. Well, the circus starts up tomorrow here at the state level. So we're going to have 2 circuses going on in politics. Stay tuned, and we appreciate your voice up there.
You're welcome. Take care. And all the folks who supported me on social media and support me in general, I'm there for your voice. I'm proud to hate we lost Jim Cooper and all the other Democrats, but I'm there, and I'll be strong for Tennessee and for Democrats.
Thank you, Congressman Cooper. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So that's, I think I just called him Congressman Cooper. Well, he said Cooper, so that got in my mind. Obviously, that's Congressman Cohen. Just gonna bring something up real quick. So, he's the only Democratic voice left up there. A couple things that we mentioned that I just want to circle back to. Obviously, we're seeing Brazil melt down right now, and hopefully democracy will survive there. But it's worth pointing out that Mark Green recently went to Brazil, and the Journal's headline was Mark Green is getting involved where now? And says Representative Green, Tennessee Republican, basically the American Conservative Union paid $15,000 to send Green down to Brazil to talk to them about quote unquote voting laws. And, he talked to Bolsonaro's allies. So that's worth asking about, especially since this is a Trump advisor saying, reminder, a handful of the same characters on the far right that supported the insurrection also took their show on the road to Brazil, now facing an insurrection. Bannon talks about Brazil regularly. Brazil has been a focus. Bolsonaro is now in Florida and definitely has met with Trump. Here's the Times. Representative Mark Green, a Republican who pushed laws combating voter fraud, met with lawmakers in Brazil to discuss quote unquote voting integrity policies. So we're at a point now where you're either with democracy or you're against it. And Rep. Mark Green, as well as every single other Tennessee Republican, voted to throw out the results of the election after the insurrection. So that's important to keep in mind as we start to see democracies all across the globe unravel in various ways. And it's important to call this out for what it is. Again, Democrats and one Republican honored the police who were attacked. The January 6th insurrection. Only one Republican showed up, which is pretty horrific. Obviously, this is a dark day for our country. And the fact that they can't even be bothered to show up says a whole hell of a lot. A lot of people are saying that this speaker circus was just kind of an extension of the insurrection, as the same people who fomented and fueled the insurrection with their lies were a part of who were holding us hostage this past week. So it's just, again, the bottom line is democracy is in peril, and we got to call out the people who are imperiling it. Which Republican showed up? That's a good question, Christy. I don't actually know the answer to that. Christine says it looks like Congressman Cohen doesn't intend to go away. Good. Yeah, I haven't heard that he's not running again. I saw you mention that, so we'll see. He's been up there a while, and he's the only Democrat left, which we need strong voices up there. It'd be fitting. These are a couple of his tweets. He said it would be fitting if they anointed a speaker on the anniversary of their holy day, the day they tried and failed to take over the government. He's a voice up there that's willing to say the things that need to be said. And on that note, tomorrow, Tennessee legislature starts up again. Justin Jones will be up there, Charlene Oliver, some new voices who are willing to say what needs to be said. But also, there's going to be at Legislative Plaza at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I hope some of you are planning to be there. I think there will be a pretty good turnout of Tennesseans showing up to voice their concerns about the attacks on LGBT folks, the anti-trans bills, the anti-women bills, that we have the most draconian abortion ban in the entire country, and many are calling for exceptions to be made and adjustments to be made to these bills. So tomorrow, Legislative Plaza, I hope y'all are planning to be there. A bus from Knoxville is coming, says Christy Brown. That's great to hear. I think there's going to be a pretty good turnout. I think this is going to be one to be at. And so I hope that you will all show up, because these people need to be made to feel uncomfortable as they make Tennesseans feel uncomfortable. And so I hope you'll join that, not only tomorrow, but throughout this upcoming session, which promises to be just as bad of a circus, if not worse, as the one that we saw in D.C. this week. Keep following the holler. Appreciate you all. Talk to you soon.